Welcome to Radio Conscious.
Hello and welcome to this podcast of Radio Conscience on Truth is Here. Tonight we have a fourth interview with Dr. Mike Castle, and it promises to be again very, very interesting. I'm your host, Jean-Francois, and our guest is online right now, and I can't wait to get some new information coming in. So, Mike, how have you been?
I've been good today. Very good.
Good. That's good to hear.
I haven't done a thing ornery yet, and I don't plan to.
So, we have 3 interviews already, and we covered a lot of ground, but I know you still have a lot of things to say on the subject of natural magnetic energy, and I can't wait to hear the continuation of this wonderful subject. So where do we start?
Well, my compliments to you, Jean-Francois, for the excellent way that you've been approaching this. We're talking about a radio conscience. I think that's important that we understand that we live in a world that doesn't have to use an electromagnetic means of any kind of radio communications. This is about your conscience, and that's the core of what I like to talk about also. But again, my compliments to you for the way that you have approached this topic. It's probably been approached by a lot of individuals, and I've listened to a lot of them through the years, but genuinely, I've never been able to just let it ride and let it flow based on my experience developing this. And so you good folks know, development, actually, I do everything. I use observations that I make to make findings and conclusions. And I've done that for 30-some years as a certified environmental risk auditor. So there's not a lot of guesswork here. It's all based on things that have already been established. But what I'm trying to convey in a message is these are things here that none of us have been taught or talked about. Again, I go back to the premise that every time someone uses the word magnetism, somebody will invariably jump in and hook electro to the front of it.
Indeed.
No, it's not electromagnetic. We are in an electromagnetic force field. We're not designed to be in that field, but we are designed to be in a natural magnetic field, which is already here. So in development, Jean-Francois, just to convey it to the listeners, you don't have to be a critical thinker. You don't have to have a label, a tag. Just have a conscious mind that might be a high school student or maybe an early college student or maybe an 8th grader. But they know that there's something else there, but they kind of given up too on trying to hear what it is. Mm-hmm. I can only suggest and advise, and that's all I'm doing is suggesting and advising. This information is free-flowing, developed on analyses from observations and research that I've conducted, and many others. But to compile it into a phrase, this is all about magnetic energy, natural magnetic energy. It's all around us. Matter of fact, we're in about a 3.5 force field right now, but that's its diminished value. What I'm talking about is being able to observe. If you take magnetite, which is a crystalline form of Fe3O4, it's an iron crystallite, fully reacted It's already in a noble state. I mean, magnetite doesn't rust in water. No. It's very unique, but iron does. So you're getting a little bit of the natural field of iron, Fe, with something embedded in it. Just like you would embed something into Memorex tape. The same exact principle exists, and it never goes away. That is the field of magnetic energy that we had upon this Earth pre-Cambrian era. This was before the dinosaurs, folks. And I know that I just need to keep saying the same thing. That energy, in fact, was captured by this little rock-eating bacterium that excreted this crystallite pellet into almost a perfect pyramidal form, a little pyramid. That's why these are so exotic as far as their surface energy, because everything in this dimension is about surface area, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And these cover this magnanimous surface area, but it's all the 10, the magnetic field embedded in this crystallite, in fact, is a 10, and it never goes away. What I observed was something that Tesla put together, which was a quartz crystal with a right spun ascending coil of copper around it. Oh, that accelerates the energy. Whatever energy it is, it accelerates it and puts a right spin on it. Now, check it out. Well, see,
it's amazing stuff. Really
the whole point being, these erupt out of the crystal. This auric energy of a 10 erupts out of these crystals in a magnetic vortex. And yes, you can meter it. You can check it with a microvoltmeter. You can actually pinpoint the areas. And we've done that. Many of us have done that. So we know it's there. It's an energy without a mass. Again, I always typeset on that, and I'll say orgone and magnetic energy are the same exact thing. It's just that why Wilhelm Reich didn't make that same conclusion, I don't know if it was of his mind. I don't know if it was important. But I remember that the copper pipe sticking out of the ground at the lake, in fact, could have been the source of this waveform going across that pond, if you remember the story about Wilhelm Reich, and when he was making his initial observations. Okay, I contend that was magnetic energy, but it, in fact, has an acoustical component. See, that's the difference.
So the frequency you were talking about or referring to in the last interview, the 32 hertz frequency?
Correct.
Okay.
And see, that's anytime you get close to 60, you're in the acoustical frequency, but this is not something you can hear. You can only feel. Mm-hmm. And a deep vibrational thud, if you will, but it doesn't even go that low. But this has an acoustic component. And they knew Wilhelm Reich, in fact, done all these things that he talked about using acoustics, using the pipe, using this form that sets up at that frequency. Okay, I've got a really belly gut roar coming from this natural magnetite of a 10 going to the crystal. Okay, that's real low frequency. As far as deflecting scalar wave, look, this is going to take all those extreme low frequency wave energies, which are electromagnetic wave energies, and it's going to neutralize them as soon as they collide with this natural magnetic vortex. That's why it deflects the scalar wave that they use to induce earthquakes. I'm telling you, people down around the New Madras Fault need to get these things up. Just put them up and use a zinc coated bucket and just that aperture. That's why because it goes up and it goes down, and it goes down all the way to the bedrock. Uh-huh. It increases something in the bedrock called magnetic cohesion. It increases this cohesiveness, like it makes it stick together better. It's just rock, but it's deflecting these energy waves that they're putting in the midst of these fault zones, and they're doing it on purpose. They've got their agenda, their plan. This will deflect it. Ask Angie Miranda over in the Philippines. Bless her soul, Dr. Angie Miranda. She confirmed this. She confirmed many of the things. that they've had happen over in Manila and that territory over there. And she told someone over in Malaysia about it, as I said before, I believe. But see, that's how this word gets around. It gets around just by people making observations. And don't make them for anybody but yourself if you want to. Just make the observations and know that you're doing something that ain't nobody else has actually done. And there is no downside. As Orgone, there is no downside. Except if you touch one of the accumulators that's built with aluminum, and you're going to get this almost depression wave coming off of. I don't know what that is. I want nothing to do with it. But you cannot get like a grounding force off of this because it is ground energy. This is a magnipole in the air. It's a magnipole in the bedrock. It's a magnipole in the water. It's a spinning vortex with a vortex spinning inside of it, counter to the right spiral. And that's what it is. It's a magnipole. It doesn't have dipoles. So as soon as that encounters this electromagnetic form of scalar wave or energy form or HARP or anything, it will deflect that wave. The same way it deflects the smart meter hooked to your house. If you just put one of these disruptors that Sarah makes anywhere in that house, or better yet, put it out there right in front of the smart meter. It won't block it. It won't obstruct it, but it deflects all of that pulsating microwave. That's exactly what it is. Spatial pulsating microwave. Just flashes out these huge volumes of microwave energy everywhere. And yes, I certainly suspect that it's already responsible for some people getting many forms of cancer, especially along in their glandular area and their stomach. Why? Because that's just about where it's at on most houses on the outside of the home. Mm-hmm. And the adjacent wall spews all this stuff too, because it's a duality system.
And what would be the radius of this these bad waves coming out of these smart meters?
It's 360.
No, but I mean, how many feet? How many feet would it reach in radius? Like
10, 15 feet, or anywhere's around it. You can't even get birds coming in the yard when they got those things singing. I've heard these things singing in the morning, walking out on my back porch, 5:30. All of a sudden, I hear this unified click, clack, click, clack, click, clack, click, clack. It was coming from everywhere in the neighborhood. Hey, people, I recognize it. That's the smart meters talking. I'm not kidding you. Talk about something that'll weird you out.
So if we were to have protection around these smart meters, could these apertures that you developed, could they disrupt the functioning capabilities of these devices?
Yes. All you need to do is to go outside and point to the direction of where your closest ground wave energy tower is, thanks to your local government, and they're respecting and protecting you from these terrorists. Okay, there ain't no terrorists. They are the terrorists. How can you protect yourself from them? Okay, just put an aperture in line with your home, somewhere, anywhere outside your home, somewhere around that. Put it around a tree, and if that tree is even close to being in line with it, doesn't make any difference. The live tree is going to pick up that natural magnetic vortex. Now you've got a companion, and live wood accelerates, amplifies this energy. It actually amplifies it. I'm not an electrician, I'm a chemist, but how can you get something that amplifies something without further energy input? Well, don't know. I do know that it amplifies.
I have a specific question here, and it's been burning my tongue for a few minutes here. If we were to point that aperture towards the house with the help of a big tree and everything, could it disrupt the smart meter to the point that they couldn't get a reading anymore?
I don't know, but I've been around a lot of people. Of recent, I've been around some retail stores and stuff like that, and just the weirdest thing happens when I wear one of these pendants in the proximity. Setting off alarms and everything else, but how can you predict what these magnetic vortices will do? You got me. Matter of fact, if you find out, let me know. But I just know that they can't be controlled. They're not something, it doesn't have an on-off switch, and there's no guidance to it. But I do know that if you do something very simple, like put an eagle feather at the top, I'll borrow something from the gentleman down in Oregonite, Austin. Very friendly on the internet, and like to meet him someday. But, when I watched one of his videos, the first thing I see, and he sent us all a great compliment too about the show, about the interview. But when I looked at this video, the first thing I thought was, hey, there's a guy whose desk looks just like mine. Crystals and wire and magnetite lay everywhere. So anyways, it's kind of funny, and I shared that with him too. But as there's more than ample latitude for many people to find something that we haven't found yet. We're not even looking for the things that you're looking for, because he's brilliant in it already. And I told him that. You're brilliant in this. And see, all you need to do is accept the principle that natural magnetic energy and orgone energy are one and the same thing, because they have the same properties. And you're not being disloyal to someone. And I can't answer the question why Wilhelm Reich didn't address this issue, but I know Einstein didn't want anything to do with it either. Okay, take all that history of these illuminateds and just put it in today's world. I don't care about that. The only thing I care about is knowing that in my research, Jean-Francois, for the tribals, the ancient Indians, the Indians that we knew on this North American continent a long time ago, I become intrigued with the concept that at one time this was all a great forest. And I think I mentioned that one time. Just imagine that. Just imagine one ecosystem after another, and they're all just connected to these forests. What must that have been like? Oh, my goodness. Because I love trees. Matter of fact, I even got my own tree there in Columbus. I named her Mabel, the big old silver maple. And she amplified this energy like I just can't describe it. I got me a Mabel pendant that I made myself. So she's always around me. And it works. Being able to being able to reverse bad weather energy going towards that area. And she likewise does the same thing here. I know that sounds just, oh my gourd, but I can assure you many others have seen the same thing, but you just got to tell them about it. One of the doctors, she's a medical doctor, board certified, came up. She'd been going to my workshops in Columbus. And I didn't know that. And she came up afterwards and she says, well, Dr. Castle, she said, I knew I wasn't crazy. She said, I heard you say you talked to one of your trees in your backyard. And she thought, oh, thank goodness, because that's her passion too, are trees. And I'm not talking about being able to communicate with them, but you can. All you have to do is talk to them. They listen to what you say. People, they're not dumb like most humans. I'm sorry. They're not. They're one thing. They're a genius species. Matter of fact, they're called genius, aren't they? Genus. But not to let things like that char too long. This thing with trees is something that is an entire interview by itself. Recall today I told you I also did observe or discover that if you take and make the orgone in a bucket, the concept of orgone in a bucket, get a zinc pail, yeah, and get it at Lowe's, probably came from China, doesn't make any difference, just zinc galvanized pail, and then you put just a handful of magnetite in the bottom. You don't need to be real thick, just in the ribs in the bottom of the pail or whatever, and then put about a 3/4 to an inch of water on top of it. throw you some quartz crystals in there and a couple of copper pennies. Now set that bucket out in the direct sunlight at 12 noon, if nothing else. Set it out there at 12 noon and let it sit there and soak up that sunlight for maybe an hour or two.
Mm-hmm.
Now, take that down there by your vegetation, your veggies and stuff, or if you have a greenhouse. I work with this in a greenhouse, and it just really blew my mind. I got 4 inches of growth from beans overnight. 4 inches.
So that's really interesting.
It's like I captured the energy of the sun in the bucket, in the magnetite, in the water. And see, this is magnetic vortices. It doesn't care what it is. Water, same thing. It will carry, but there's something that we've captured there that we don't understand. It's almost like magnetite in a film works almost like a photovoltaic cell. I've actually got some very, very high readings of microvolts from one such thing, a coating made with the magnetite, a magnetite-crete, and put on cardboard. Yeah. Hook a couple of wires into it. And I'm getting almost 4,000 microvolts from this sitting in the sun. I don't know. There's something here that is very unique. I don't know what it is, but I just know it comes from the shape of the magnetite itself. It's a perfect pyramid in its form, in the sizes. Now, they're not concise, not every one of them, but that's their basic shape of a crystalline material. A crystallite. So being in pyramidal form, there's just so many things that you could say about, oh, we really wonder what magnetite is, and I've already called it precious. It is. It's precious because of the energy form that comes from this, which has been completely held away from us. But again, this is what the rain dancers knew of old. The Hopewell put these stack rocks in their in all their mounds and their mound areas that we know. And there was a reference one time to lodestone. And then just at Serpent Mound, some of the archaeological dig finds that they found copper beads. Copper beads. Now, right there you've got all the components that I just described to you that's in the pendant. You have magnetite or lodestone developing the auric energy into a crystal with a helical wind, a helical of copper beads. Okay. This is ancient Indians. What's the chances of that happening? Pretty couple trillion to one. But now we got all 3 components. Now, was there something there? Yeah, I've already told you that I think that the serpent mound is actually representation of fertility, not a snake. Just look at the aerial photographs of it. And then the wind of the tail, which is a spiral to the right. It's a spiral to the right. I think that's where the rain dancers done their works. Right there in the center of that tail spiral. A right spin, right spiral tail wind at the end of it. And just look at that, and you can see almost that these mounds were used as almost a generator of these harmonics, which is acoustical and the natural magnetic vortices. I think that they used those. They used these vortices because that's what they were told to do, to have abundant fishing, to have unbelievable vegetation and harvest, and all the things that were of plenty. Because, see, the medicine men and the rain dancers were like, they took care of things. They were taught by somebody ancient before them how to do this. Who was that? But I guess fast forward to the question. Oh, I wonder what happened to that. We never heard of that before. No, and you probably will not. So I've scrapped up all these things and encourage anybody else, in fact, whatever they can do. This is not for money. That's the delusion of the reptilians anyways, people. It's not worth it. This is for the vastness of obtaining knowledge, natural knowledge about our fundamental being. We were assigned to the surface, and these things can develop the pathway to pull us out of this. Forget anything that says electro something, please, or technology, please. Strike that word from your vocabulary because it will be your greatest enemy. Technology. These are the transhumans. These are the transhumanisms. And therefore, that's how this whole thing scales itself together. It pastes itself together at the Morgellons fibers, as David Icke himself said, it's let's just say in the ending, the finality of this is a polycrystalline array. Think about that a second. These Morgellons fibers do have some sort of artificial intelligence. Even though they may have been developed here, I doubt it. But the question is, what's the artificial intelligence? Where's that stuff from? Well, artificial intelligence means these fibers grow into your cranial area where you used to have a brain based on tissue and gray matter and protoplasm. Well, if it replaces that, which the dendritic type of glass ionomers are specifically designed to do, yeah, I read those patents. I know how they got their ionomeric glass ionomer, and I see how they feed the thing and what they feed it with. And guess what? The eventuality of this is that's a transceiver. It's a two-way thing. But you really don't talk back to it, but something's communicating with it. But it's telling you what to do every single moment of your life. You understand only the word obey.
Yeah.
That's the reptilians talking to you.
Mm-hmm. Makes me think of the movie They Live. Every time I hear that word, it's very reptilian.
Well, it could equate to a number of things, but see, we're just taking a journey on to what this Earth once was, and it was just so marvelous. It still is, but it's quite diminished.
But why? I'm going to ask you a straightforward question here. Why are we so addicted to technology? Why?
Because that's what it does. It addicts you. It addicts you, whether the technologies in fact are food, because that's addictive in its own right, all of it, and non-nutritious. Matter of fact, it will kill you. My opinion, it will kill you, as this GMO in fact excretes glyphosate into your gut for the rest of your life until you eliminate it. After your gut in fact doesn't digest anymore with bioacids like it's supposed to, it in fact starts fermenting. Wow. Yeah, it ferments, creates gases. So anyways, this fermentation, but this glyphosate, in fact, is going to excrete into you from that corn product that you ate. Even high fructose corn syrup will do this, cause this inflection in your biological makeup. It will certainly cause genetic damage. Certainly. By the way, the one that's most associative with that corn is called the agrogenome. You ever heard of the agrogenome?
No.
Well, they mutate that with something like a fusarium or some other wicked mold or strain or even chlamydia. But it's rhizomic, and it in fact it replicates. It's like a virus. So what you're eating in corn is almost like the hard stuff of a virus. I'm not kidding you. This is just cellulosic material, but it's real weird. Don't eat the corn. Don't eat the GMO. This stuff is technically poison to you. It's poison to you. That's why cattle will not eat it. That's why most animals will not eat it in their feed. They know something really stinks here. So they got to force feed it to them or they starve to death. But see, they do that anyways. They're not getting any nutrients because glyphosate works by superchelation. That's how it kills plants. That's why Roundup is called Roundup, because it starves nutrients of any kind to that plant, so it dies. That's doing the same thing in your gut. It's starving you.
And that's Monsanto all over there. It's written
It's all
Monsanto all over this.
Monsanto.
Monsanto, yes. That's
Monsanto.
probably the most evil corporation on the planet.
Oh, I'm not a violent man.
After the Vatican, maybe.
Well, I'm not a violent person, but I just hope they round all these up and like those at the top executives of Monsanto or any of their operations people or whatever, and in fact line them up and convict them for mass murder and chop their heads off. That's the only way I know how to stop this. Why? Because they're all serpents. They're all serpentine. They are the reptilian, but they're serpentine. That's just like that piece of you know what in the White House. Same thing. It's not really a person. They're all actors. Everyone you see on TV, the newspapers, whatever, these are all actors, and they've been actors for such a long time. Oh, I mean, ever since TV was.
And some of them are good at it, too. Whoa.
Some of them are masters at it. And we've heard a lot about them. But nonetheless, it is the reptilian. It's the shape-shifting serpentines that are amongst us, and they're at least half of Congress or more, combined with the reptilians on Wall Street. They're all reptilian. They're not of our species. They don't like this energy. They don't like natural magnetic energy. You see, that's what I found. I found out that if you have this aperture sitting in your house, you ain't going to have no small grays visiting you for a while, giving you an anal probe, because it screws up their gravionics of whatever those craft are, whether they're here, us, or there. It doesn't make any difference. This magnetic vortex is so much more powerful than anything that they can in fact create, because it's either electromagnetic or natural magnetic, and this will neutralize anything because it's ground energy.
It's minus.
Minus. It's ground energy. Yeah, that's my only description of it. Minus. It's like an equal sign.
So it's
I think
so
that's
basically whatever the strength they use on their devices. If you have a vortices, if you put up an aperture, no matter what the size of that electromagnetic pulse or whatever coming in your way, I mean, there's no way it could disturb it.
No. Now, you can set up your own domain. That's why I'm encouraging people to get these around their trees. First of all, your tree will love it. It'll come to life. But it amplifies this energy. It develops almost like a dB gain. You know what gain is on an antenna? This does somewhat the same thing. Can't explain it to you in principles of science and electronics and all that mishmash, because it's got the word electro. These things don't work. Rock works extremely well as an antenna for natural magnetic energy. Rock. Rock and roll.
So it's very, very interesting. I mean, if we're to look at the practical side for your garden or your greenhouse, it's totally amazing. I mean, you can have all kinds of giant vegetables, and at the same time you can repulse all these electromagnetic waves that are coming your way. So it's the best of both worlds. It's beautiful. It's amazing. Simply amazing. Mike, are you still there? Mike, are you still there?
Yeah, I muted my mic. Beg your pardon.
Sorry. Okay.
And I said, don't forget, this also works better than anything I've ever seen at the microbial level. Okay, and we're at the macro level. This is at the micro. What it does is the energy of it's what spikes them into reproducing. Bacteria reproduce profusely in this magnetic energy. Why? Because it's natural. It's natural. It's earth. It's ground energy. They respond to that. And I think that's why it also responds to the collection of sunlight and the energy of sunlight in ways that we can't explain yet. But it doesn't make any difference. Just go try it. You'll see that you'll probably like it very, very, very much because it increases the microbial strains in the soils. And that's, in fact, what's causing the accelerated growth. This is not fertilizer. Fertilizer is strictly a chemical entity, but it doesn't, in fact, deal with enzymes or macroenzymes or dipoles. And it's actually energizing the plant or the tree because it increases the photosynthesis capability of that function in any plant. And by the way, I'm really doing a bad job of quoting Dr. John Malusky. I'm going to have to read that again. But folks, he's the one that performed those tests and developed that equation. And it's not an equation. It's just like I said. It's very simple. It accelerates like a catalyst the development of chlorophyll through something that does not have dipoles associated with it. They're magnepoles. And it's the magnetopole that increases this energy itself. So therefore, it would also increase the full spectrum of energy absorption of something like sunlight. So if you get my drift, this is our pathway out of this, but we just need to do it all on our own, do it by ourselves, and start talking to people. And if you find that these things, in fact, are enriching to your life, and yes, something to look forward to, something to repulse this stuff, we're going to still try to take them down otherwise. We're all working on it. But look, it gives you something that you can do. And I'm interested in what you observe. Only what you observe, not how much you paid for it or anything. Money doesn't count in this world. It's a delusion. It is the reptilian delusion. Hook the reptilian delusion directly to Satan, by the way. Because there was a marriage all the way back during the ancient times of the Druid priest. Yeah, they hooked up a deal. They made a deal with something that came from underground and something that came from outer space. Yeah, those are reptilians. It's such an odd, bizarre thing that you couldn't possibly write a book or make a movie like this. It's just so obvious what the deception is. To me, after working with natural magnetic energy, because I can have faith in that, not a belief. Get away from believe and belief. Please, get away from that. If you can assign the word faith in its place, then you're on the right track. And only do something that you can assign faith in your mind and your heart to, not a belief, because that means that you're going to trust somebody else. I said before, trust no one except God. Only trust God. And your spiritual feeling. As we had a brief discussion the other day about, I wonder really where we actually came from. Well, go back a little bit further because our time is so short on the surface anyways. Go back to a time where your spirit may have came from. If I can do anything to get you good people, in fact, just to consider that, not asking you to create any religious type of violations or something else that was in dogma, tells you it's forbidden, don't do that. No, it's not. Think about that. Think about where you really came from, where your spirit came from, where your soul came from. Of course, it came from heaven. Because you can't believe in hell if you don't believe in heaven, or vice versa. But your spirit came from somewhere. We don't know what that is. But I've tracked mine to a faraway place. But it's not really so far away. Matter of fact, it's spoken about by the Hopi considerably. They thought that the entire universe orbited that particular named planet. They spelled it Alcyon. Modern day man spells it Alcyone. Well, same place, just it's not the star, it's a huge planet outside the star. And I can actually show you a picture of that taken by Hubble. It shows this massive planet outside this one star. It's there. It's there. I'm just assigning what it's called. So I know I have a lineage somehow to that, but it doesn't make any difference. Maybe you don't have to. You don't have to have a buzzword, a DeVite. You don't have to have anything. Just take what you learn from this, get some magnetite, get you some good crystals, and there's crystals come, mica flakes. Mica is a very, very good crystal. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
Just mica. Right. See, but it's how it in fact erupts, or let's say picks this energy up into the form of spinning it through a coil. Just a wire coil. Well, in the ancient time, they used wire beads. Again, I'm just trying to demonstrate that there's so many things that point to this being completely obfuscated because it does so many things. There would not be a reptilian chemical industry. There would not be a reptilian anything. Their world would crumble and literally blow away if we knew about this a long time ago. This is something that we all need to consider. And that's all I can do is to be. I've been talking on radio for 13 years. And some another I've maintained talking about somewhat the same things, because yes, these apertures dependence too, they will repulse the chemtrails because of the interference. Chemtrails are spit out the back of aircraft and the wings of aircraft and everywhere else, but they're given a plus charge. They're given a charge before they leave.
Okay, so basically the apertures would just push them over a few miles or something, right?
Yeah, just as they done in the Queensland area of Australia. There's one sector there, and I'm certain that you've all seen the photographs of these guys that look like they're like great big huge harpoon guns, and it shows them blowing up a chemtrail in the air. Well, see, that's what they were doing. But I do. It is my opinion that is a good demonstration of natural magnetic energy as well, because it works the same way. It has virtually all the same properties of something that you can't see or measure. No, we're in a magnetic field right now, much weaker. I'm just saying, use this magnetic field that we spun into a crystal, thanks to Tesla, spun it in this crystal, got a good ceramic bond to it, and these magnetic energies, let them do the work. They'll neutralize a tornado coming right at you, or a hailstorm, or bad weather, or Wright called it DOR. See, and there's where the minus, in fact, will neutralize the DOR, because it's electromagnetic mesocyclonic. There is no natural weather. Everything has been succumbed to the electromagnetic field grid that they've got across this planet, and it's vastly expanding.
Will that ever,
electromagnetic fog? It's unreal how bad this is for us all.
Will that field eventually collapse, in your opinion?
If you take the aperture, you can develop these natural magnetic vortices right above your home or right in your area, and just encourage somebody else close to you to do the same thing. You can develop these to the point where all ground fall from chemtrails will be repulsed from your area. They will be repulsed from your area. I don't care if they're nanofibers. I don't care what they are. They will be repulsed by this, or short-circuited. I call it reverse polarity in the air. And folks, I'm just trying to go forward, because this this morphology into Morgellons disease, it doesn't exist. According to the CDC, it's still delusional parasitosis. Well, that's bunk. That's the lizards talking to you, along with the zeta grays that are infested into all of our agencies, along with the Mossad, which are strictly reptilian. But see, all this combination, well, who are our enemies? They harbor this thing called technology. Strike that from your vocabulary. It will end up being your worst enemy. Smart meters are for technology, but they're also going to be surveilling you every second of your life and killing you at the same time. So it's in the food, it's in the water, it's in the air, it's in everywhere. Okay, you can repulse much of this stuff by just establishing your own magnetic vortex. Keep it simple. And I just told you numerous times how to do that. Well, the old Indians knew how to do it. I'm sure you can figure it out. and it attracts wild things, too.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know.
I remember you telling me about this, was it a yellowtail hawk landing on your back fence?
We lived in a ghetto area of Columbus, Ohio. Yeah. There hasn't been a yellowtail hawk in those parts since, well, I don't know when. But we live in a ghetto area. No, yellowtail hawk ain't going to go hunting right there because that's just way out of his territory. We took a photograph of it. My deceased wife took a photograph of this. This was in 2007, I think, 2007 or 8. She took a photograph of it, and somewhere I've got that photograph on my computer somewhere. But anyways, it does attract wild things. The geese, and I do contend that the geese, in fact, would fly corridors. So here they would come from the southwest, where there's like a lake pond over by the school system, like a detention pond, it's a shallow pond. Well, they would always go there in the morning. Well, late in the evening, they would take off, or early in the morning, 4:30. And my wife also observed all this. But they would get to our house and literally make a left-hand turn and fly straight north from where my aperture was sitting inside the house. That's a true story. What are they sensing? I don't know. How does a snowbird, in fact, fly at 15,000 feet where you can't see and you freeze to death without some type of protection? And these snow geese, in fact, fly these altitudes, and I don't know. How do they know where they're at? Okay. They found out that the snowbird species has one stripe in its beak. That one stripe in its beak was assessed and analyzed as magnetite, Fe3O4. So see, even the wild animals, the wildfowl, know things that we don't. We should, but we don't.
So the navigation is done with this magnetite, I guess, for these.
Well, there's been findings of the same type of flesh and magnetite in the pineal gland of certain wild animals. The pineal gland. So when you take all this into consideration, you could in fact do a lot better job in explaining behaviors and of certain types of wild things. And all I, in fact, invoke is the fact that it will attract wild things. We had more raccoons in that little yard, raccoons and possums, and we're in the middle of a ghetto, ladies and gentlemen. Nobody else had any of this in their backyard. Of course, they all had pit bulls too, or something, and we didn't. But what I'm saying is, it will make your backyard some of your best domain. It will make your backyard the place that you like to go, because it's like we're attracted to this energy. I'm giving you a straight observation there. It is. I mean, I can't take my pendant off except when I get wet or take a shower or something.
Have you ever noticed different behaviors or behavior modification around people who were like aggressive or trying to be anyways, and when you were wearing this pendant?
Well, yes, of course. I've seen that many a times. And, but, you just have to tell yourself while they're screaming at you or calling you a bad name or trying to demean you in some way, they don't understand. You're well within your parameters, in fact, just to say, well, they don't understand. Mm-hmm. Stand your ground here because you're wearing ground energy. This is the energy that they, in fact, don't want to encounter. Why? Because it shines up in the hippocampus region of your brain. There's where most of the damage to our brain is, in fact, entering in that region, including the chemtrails, including the Morgellons syndrome. I think all this is interconnected, but they don't like this energy. They in fact, reverse polarity because those are all electromagnetic entities, and they only work if they have electromagnetism to work with. Well, guess what? Screw your electro anything. How about a dose of ground energy? We didn't do anything, but I just found out that that's what this energy was coming from these pendants. Obviously. If that makes sense to you.
Yeah, it sure does.
If that makes sense to you.
It sure does.
But see, it's something that was practiced in ancient times. It's something that today it was somewhat invoked because I did start talking about radionics last interview, the interview before that. Radionics is something of a no-no word. That's not something they want you to go around talking about. Why? Because they thought that they had summarily killed that information a long time ago, around the 1920s, 1930s. Mm-hmm.
But
when there are actual factual accounts of people somewhere in California using their, well, they call it telepathic back then, but they healed somebody over in France. That's just a fast forward of the history of radionics. Then there were some of these guys that were great radio operators. You know, I mean, it was during the era of things when they talked about audions and things like that. And these guys, in fact, they found out that they could do certain things. They could affect certain events just by talking about them, but not giving it negative energy, not giving it bad energy. There's nothing wrong with negative energy if it's minus minus. If that's what we're going to be ascribed, negative, all right, minus minus is not negative energy, it's ground.
It's ground energy. So but basically, that's really the focal point of this wonderful information you're giving us. It is ground energy, and
it's ground energy.
It's going to neutralize any electromagnetic pulses or waves, yes. So it's really important. Really,
it's important. And it doesn't take any type of individual to recognize that, as long as somewhere along the line you were recognized as a human. I'm certain that if animals can understand this, we should be able to get it. Don't you agree?
Yeah.
We should be able to understand it. And it's that simple. But we've been plastered throughout our entire lives with this doctrine of dogma and crap from these reptilians and the Illuminati and the Demolays and the pointy heads and all this junk with sacred geometry. Screw your numerology. That's all I got to say. I'm not a respecter of any of your daggone evil numerology. I can use any number I want, but I purposely steer away from what the Bible told me to do. They said avoid 666 or 9s or any association with that because it means one thing. Okay, if I've got somebody's phone number, I did at one time, and after their area code, the first 3 numbers was 666. I wanted to talk to those people all the time, but I wouldn't dial that number. I don't think I ever told them that either, but there was just something about it. And no, they had no behaviors that were bad or anything, but it's just that when you get assigned that number, think about it again. If you can, reject it, rebuke it. A rebuke is the same as a prayer. You hear me? A rebuke is the same as a prayer. You choose what expletives you want to use with your rebuking it, an entity, a force you don't know or understand. But as Isaiah 54:17 says, no weapons forged against me shall prosper. You can say that if you want to. But this is all open, not to any type of conjecture or vacillation, or you got to symbolize it and make some type of symbol or whatever, or jump up and put 3 fingers up and say 1, 2, 3, Aquila, or what. You don't have to do none of that stuff. This is done with your mind and your heart. Your heart. You can, and I use the word will, you can will something like nice, warm, wet rain to come into your area. It will neutralize the mesocyclonic components of it. As far as, this is not lightning that you see, ladies and gentlemen. Look at it again. This is nothing more than not to the ground static electrical bolts. That's all it is. It's the same as static. It's the same as static electricity. It's a zap. It doesn't have anything to do with the normal processes by which lightning and thunder, in fact, interpolate with every living thing on this planet. But again, it's I know it's a big world, but it's so simple. Once you take all that stuff that we've been taught through all of our lives, and all the lies and deception that they literally hammered into our brain, like the Revolutionary War. No? Go look. We didn't win that because there was a dude by the name of Hamilton, in fact, that struck a deal as an agent with the city of London back then, the Queen. Yeah, struck a deal. Somebody worrying about the money, the delusion again. The sign of the serpent. Yeah. So did we really, in fact, win the Revolutionary War? Not in my book. I believe a deal was struck. But they claim that they own America. Oh, well. I'll give you my best Geronimo salute to that.
Anyways, this subject is absolutely fascinating. I always enjoy listening to you talk about this. It's like wonderful, really wonderful.
Well, thank you very much, Jean-Francois. And I'll just keep saying the same thing. I don't get around to writing a lot of papers and stuff because none of this is about me. None of this is about me. I know I'm being very modest and everything. But as I have prayed for a long time, I know that everything that I've been led to talk about, that God has led me and to talk about it. I call those gifts and talents, everything I've ever done has been self-taught. Not by the academians, but self-taught. And through a great career in at least 3 or 4 different fields. Mm-hmm. But see, this is where the fundamentalism of this planet, this earth, really lies. Talking about something that is a primal energy of this planet. If it wasn't for natural magnetism, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be talking to one another. You see, it is in fact starving us. By the way, the oxygen level goes up from the trees when you put it, envelope it in this natural magnetic field. Don't forget that. We're going to start producing more oxygen, which is what we're short of by a vast count. Did you know that the National Ambient Air Quality Standard does not even register a measurement of oxygen, O2? No, it's calculated. And it's less than 3% based on what we're in fact assimilating that we've got to have to survive. The chemtrails are contraindicating to that because they are sharp, pointed, just like glass shards, just like tips of glass. Mm-hmm. These glass puncture the alveoli in your lung, so you can't. In fact, you can breathe all day long, but you're not going to hyperventilate because it's not going to overcome you with too much oxygen because you can't use the oxygen anymore. You can't put it into your bloodstream through the alveoli. If that makes sense to you. I wrote about that in my first paper, the methodic demise of natural earth, because that's exactly what it is. It's designed to lower your oxygen level in your body to the point that you got to have some more drugs or something, some of them pharmaceutical drugs to make you feel better. No, all part of the grand delusion. Okay, I'm off of it.
So, Mike, again, this was a fascinating interview, and I do hope we'll continue this in the near future.
Let's continue.
I'm not even satisfied yet. I feel I still have so much to learn about this. So,
don't forget, me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
I'd like to remind the listeners of this podcast to visit Dr. Castle's website at Castle Concepts with an S .information solve spelled SOLV.com, and in there you're going to find a lot of useful information on the subject we discussed tonight and the plan for the aperture that Dr. Castle has been talking about over the last 4 interviews. So, Mike, in conclusion, I'll leave you the floor.
Okay, well, just to reaffirm something that I told you here a couple days ago, we plan to make available the aperture, but it's the zinc galvanized bucket type of aperture. Mm-hmm. So it's compact and easy to put up, and it'll be a copper pipe. And that's just a matter of packaging. One doesn't fit inside the other for convenient packaging. Mm-hmm. But we are going to make that available on the Castle Concept website along with the pendants and the disruptors. So, because a lot of people, in fact, want to know, well, I got disposable income. Can I just buy one of these from you? So, yeah, it'll cost about $150 plus the shipping cost, mm-hmm. which is probably $5 or $10. No big thing, but some people can afford that, and some people can't. But I'd be more than glad to direct anybody on how to get the magnetite. Of course, crystals. Just put it in your search engine, you'll get more crystals than you really bargained for. Mm-hmm. They all come from South America or China. Very few come from the U.S. The Herkimer diamonds of Pennsylvania are unique as far as crystals go. So, anyways, we'll save that for a different time. John Francois, thank you very much, sir. You and Araz have yourself a beautiful, blessed night.
Thank you, and blessings your way.